and welcome. My name is John Batchelder, and I'm the Executive Director of the Dallas Chamber Music Society, here to present another episode of Chamber Music Chats, our video featurette hosting guest artists from our season's roster to engage in interesting, casual conversation about all things chamber music. Today, I'm joined by Daniel Roberts, violinist of the Castalian String Quartet, who will be performing on Monday, November 6th at 7:30 p.m., the second concert of our 2023-24 season. Daniel, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, in the spirit of our first performance that just happened, there's a lot of excitement about you all coming to Dallas for the first time. The Castalian String Quartet, it's been hailed for its powerful individuality of sound, been making waves in the chamber music scene. While we certainly have some patrons that are familiar with the ensemble, could you still briefly introduce yourselves and about the origins of how the string quartet came together?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started off in 2011, and actually I'm the only remaining founder member, which I'm not quite sure what that says about me, but there we go. And as with a lot of quartets, yeah, we've gone through some membership changes, but we started in London, and the quartet's still based in London. And we studied for a while in Hanover, in Germany, where there's a fantastic Masters in Chamber Music program. And then from there, we kind of got our break. We did well in some competitions, and then we were signed up by YCAT, which is the Young Classical Artists Trust, which kind of acts as management for artists at the beginning of their career. And they were just absolutely wonderful for us, and started this relationship with the Wigmore Hall here in London. And so we've been super lucky that they put their faith in us from a relatively early stage, and we're still playing there lots. And then just before COVID, David Rowe, our US manager, signed us, and even though of course everything was delayed as for everybody else, we're now touring the States a couple of times a year, and it's thrilling and living our dreams, I would say.
Wonderful, amazing. Well, the first question I had, want to talk to you a little bit about is your program. I've been following the quartet for some time now, and I've always been amazed about the interesting programming that you all do. Can you talk a little bit about how you paired? This program features some works that certainly our community members will be less familiar with, as well as some treasured works for the repertoire. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the conversations you have when programming or planning for seasons, and maybe also a little bit about the pieces that you'll be featuring here in Dallas?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think in general, we're kids in a sweet shop, with the quartet repertoire, and it's trying to, a lot of the time it's trying to keep up. Like, for example, we have not played all the Beethoven quartets, so each season it's like, okay, what's missing? What are we going to do? We have so many. We've played a lot of repertoire, and it feels like there's so much to go. So there's always that. We try and have the 2 or 3 big new works from the kind of classical repertoire, Schubert, Beethoven, what have you, and then some Mozart, Haydn, early Beethoven, some romantic stuff. So we kind of we have the traditional thing, pieces, which of course we all just adore playing, and why probably we all started out doing it. And then what as I mentioned, our relationship with the Wigmore Hall, and they've been great in encouraging us to think about cycles far in advance. And so we sit down with them and we say, okay, we're going to do, like we did a Brahms and Schumann cycle, Haydn Opus 76 cycle, and last season we played all 3 Britten quartets. And so then we think, okay, of course we want to continue performing them elsewhere in future seasons. And then we have commissions. We've also been very fortunate to have financial support for commissioning composers. Most recently, Mark Anthony Turnage, British composer. And so we have kind of all these options. And then we like to also offer maybe concept programs is not there, but some kind of narrative in a program, and see if anybody takes it on, which you have. And so we're thrilled about that. And so the program is a bit of a gloomy theme, really, isn't it? It's Ungrievable Lives. And the title comes from one of our most recent commissions by a British composer called Charlotte Bray. And it was commissioned by a few places, Wigmore Hall and the Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg. And the subject matter is migration and child refugees specifically. And the work kind of charts or comments on the journey on a migrant boat in the Mediterranean of a child. And so you have the kind of stark, horrific reality in the work, but Charlotte also brings out the fact that a child, no matter what situation they're in, has an imagination and has a tendency to play. So there's also a tremendous lightness in places. And it's a work of 13 very short movements, and each of those movements has been inspired in turn by an art installation, which is very powerful. And so we've, in the first performances, the installation was always with us. And to kind of try and describe that, it's 13 children's life jackets that have been just washed up on the shore in the Mediterranean. And the artist, called Caroline Burraway, has transformed each of those into a little girl's dress. And so they're displayed with kind of sand on the floor. I'm not describing it very well, but they're very powerful. And most of the time we've performed it, they've been in the foyer, so the audience files past them. But in fact, we recently performed the work in the University of Oxford as part of our residency there, in one of the college chapels. And they were in the space with us, so we could also see the inspiration. But the work definitely does not need the installation, but it's kind of good to be aware of it. And so the title of that piece is Ungrievable Lives. And so the theme, then we're also playing Mendelssohn Opus 80, which is, of course, a huge favorite. And Mendelssohn, as you know, I'm sure most of your audience will know, wrote it for the after the in a kind of fury after the death of his sister Fanny, and also towards the end of his life. And then Britten's Third Quartet was also written at the end of his life, and takes themes from his opera Death in Venice. And it's an incredibly personal work that was only premiered after his death by the Amadeus Quartet. So I think it's a very contrasting program, and knitted together by these two little miniatures by Dowland and Delassus that are originally for voice, but both comment on the same subject matter, and they're kind of exquisite and heartbreaking little miniatures amongst. And then there's the Charlotte Bray is almost a kind of set of miniatures, and then you have these two kind of large large scale works. So that's the idea behind the program.
Oh, beautiful. Is there a place describing the art installation? Is there a place online where viewers can perhaps visit to kind of get a taste of it? Obviously, it's not the same as having in person, but as a point of reference that you might recommend, or
Well, the artist Caroline Burraway has a website,
okay.
As is the composer Charlotte Bray,
Mhm.
and I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, but there's a lot of material online. If
Sure.
you Google the piece, you can see the images.
Sure, and we can certainly put a link in the description below as well for our viewers to
Yeah, great.
so wow. Well, so this concert, sort of shifting now, this concert is the second for you of what is a robust US tour,
Yeah,
which certainly can imagine and know it can be taxing, after so many days on the road for you all. Just curious, what are some of the ways when on the road that you sort of manage those, the stresses that are attached with such a schedule like that? What are some of the ways, perhaps together or individually that you kind of deal with that?
yeah, it's a really good question, because for sure it can be stressful,
Mhm.
and and tiring, and I mean, even the fact of lugging a large suitcase around, and you arrive often, kind of in the dead of night in places that you have really no concept of. um, but the beauty of playing a string quartet is you're always with those three other people, and I think we always find ways to support each other, even if someone's super annoyed you for some reason in the last rehearsal or whatever. You're still so grateful that they're there,
Mhm.
and when that you miss that flight connection, and you're like, oh no,
Mhm.
everyone stands around and one person makes the phone call. It's Everyone's supporting each other.
Yeah.
So that's one huge benefit. And then individually, we all like different things. I love to arrive in a place and find a great restaurant
Mm.
and have a beer, and Stefan, our cellist, and I usually seek out the local delicacies, and that immediately kind of makes you feel like you're understanding some of the place, and then you talk to people in the restaurant and this kind of thing, and we're all forever arriving at hotels and asking for recommendations.
Right.
And for us, I think that's very important. I mean, others in the group traditionally like to arrive and go to bed and have their own time and do yoga and this kind of thing. So it's each to their own, but I definitely always like to dump my stuff and then you know take a walk
Mhm.
and discover a bit.
Yeah.
um and I'm forever finding out at which hour I should be turning on the TV to watch soccer, I
Ah.
should say, football, and this kind of thing. So you have those, which is often, it's often like kind of 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. So I watch some football with breakfast and then start the day. So
Yeah.
it's nice. All these little things
Nice. Nice. Well,
help
we
a lot.
certainly have some great food recommendations for you. That's for sure. So
Good.
when you hear, I'm sure, Texas barbecue, you're probably familiar with or had before on other occasions. We've got some great places. So,
Good.
well, speaking of the location, this is, as I mentioned during the opening, your first time performing in Dallas, although not your first time to Texas. That being said, are there specific things, and perhaps maybe some of what you mentioned or alluded to, that you're looking forward to about your first visit to this city of ours?
Well, yeah, I think you have already mentioned barbecue, and that was absolutely top of the agenda, really.
Right.
Um, yeah. I think it's so. I used to look up I've never been to Dallas even to perform, although been to the airport. But I always used to look up when we were touring and think, oh, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there, and try and, you know, understand. And now I just kind of tend to let it happen, and just, you know, go with your recommendations, and they're, you know, I would say usually the best. And so as I say, you know, taking a walk, just getting a flavor of the place. There's not usually time for you know, proper sightseeing, unless, you know, some promoter or somebody says, okay, you really have to see this, and then off we go. But taking a walk, going into a cafe, etc. You know, that's my idea. So all suggestions welcome.
Okay. Well, we'll certainly think of some, that's for sure. Well, one question that I've asked all of the previous groups and artists that have come through, you know, because it's so personal and also just so unique, and just, you know, love hearing the stories, is there a specific chamber music experience, whether as a performer or an audience member, that holds really special significance to you? Perhaps an aha moment that, oh, this is the moment I realized I want to be a string quartet musician, or even as a child, you know, a concert that said, wow, that, you know, something that's imprinted on you, you know, an experience.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think that's really hard to pick one. I remember very clearly my first string quartet experiences when I was like 9 or 10, and then I would go twice yearly to a course in Suffolk called Procorda, which a lot of chamber musicians in the UK have been through, and all those courses, you know, were seminal experiences, and really met so many friends there, and you're meeting like-minded people who, you know, the day's finished and you want to go and read music together and discover these quartets. I would say in terms of one particular concert was when I mean, I already knew I wanted to do it, but there was in Manchester when I was 16 or 17, there was a string quartet festival, and two great British quartets played one after the other on the same afternoon. And the first was the Chillingerian Quartet, and they played Rosamunda, and then Opus 130, and then the Endelian Quartet followed, and they played Schubert, Death and the Maiden. And I just thought, well, if I had any doubts, then this is what, and the energy in the room was just electrifying. Then that's what I decided I would study in Manchester because of that festival, and they had a fantastic chamber music department. But there was also there was a course in Italy called the Xenia Chamber Music course, where I'm now a teacher. But I went as a student first when I was 18, and I was a bit kind of nervous going, and I thought, well, I don't speak any Italian, but it was quite an international course, and still is in this amazing setting in the Alps near Turin. And on about the second night, one of the members of staff, who didn't speak a word of English, she's a Russian lady, who'd studied with Rostropovich and the Borodin Quartet. She kind of dragged me and some of the others into a room, and we sight read the Razumovsky quartets. And she was just, without talking, just through her cello and conviction, was showing us, you know, the tradition that she came from and what that meant to her. And I just thought, wow, this truly is the best thing ever. So yeah, those are a few.
Amazing. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time. to join me this afternoon, this evening, where you are. And thank you to our audience members for once again tuning in to Chamber Music Chats. Again, the Castalian String Quartet will be here in Dallas on November 6th. That's Monday, November 6th. The concert starts at 7:30 p.m. I guarantee it is one that you will not want to miss.